Hi, I'm Derek Creaky, and I will be describing a before reading strategy, modeling a during reading strategy, and describing an after reading strategy for the book Now Let Me Fly, The Story of a Slave Family. The topic to be brought up in this story is slavery, and the intended grade level is grade 5. The summary of the book is, this story is told through the point of view of the narrator, Minna, and describes her life as a child in Africa to growing up and living in America under the hardships of slavery. She meets a boy on the ship to America in which she ends up marrying and having 4 children with. After being separated from her parents and her husband, Minna is forced to raise her 4 children by herself on a plantation. However, her children are taken from her one by one until she is left with only her youngest one for the rest of her time on the plantation. A before reading strategy that I could use is engaging students in a picture walk. It will present them with pictures of slaves in different settings, such as on the boat, on the plantation, working in fields, and ask them how these pictures make them feel. Now, the during reading strategy I will be modeling is the read aloud, think aloud strategy, and having students make personal connections by asking questions to them throughout the reading. I will never forget the day I first wanted to fly. Do any of you remember a time in your life when you've wanted to fly? My name was Minna then. I lived in Africa. It was many years ago, in 1815, but I can remember the day as if it were yesterday. My life was so happy then. That day, my mother and I were selling baskets and mats of straw at the marketplace. I became troubled when I saw a beautiful bird beating its wings against its wooden cage, trying to escape. "You should be free, little bird," I whispered. I opened the cage door and watched as the bird spread its wings and flew away. I wished I could fly above the clouds with it. My mother didn't scold me, even though the man who owned the bird shouted and waved his fist angrily at me. She just pressed some of our baskets into the man's hands to quiet him, and then said these words to me: "You did the right thing, my daughter. No living thing should ever be confined." Do you think what Minna's mother just said is a sign of foreshadowing? Later, as we crossed the savannah on our walk home, I heard the sound of drum beats. "Mother," I said in anticipation, "do you hear the drums? Will there be dancing tonight, or will the old ones tell their stories?" "No, child, there is no joy in the sound of those drums," said my mother. "Hurry, we must get home." "Why do you think the drums are not a sign of joy?" When we arrived at our settlement, day had already dissolved into night. Many had gathered in a circle, their faces lit by the flickering campfire. What things do you think of when you're sitting by a campfire? The council of elders was meeting, presided over by my father, the chief. It seems a man from our compound named Dongo was on trial. I was not surprised, for this was not Dongo's first trial. My father challenged Dongo. "It is said that you kidnapped some of our people and sold them as slaves. No one has seen you commit this outrage, but your past leads us to believe you are the only one among us who would harm us. Therefore, you are banished from the settlement, Dongo. Leave here and never come back, or your life will come to a quick and painful end." 2 men led Dongo away. The next morning, as I played in my family's compound, I hummed the songs my mother sang to me as a baby. Do any of you remember your mom singing you songs when you were younger? Only footsteps away, my mother ground grain with the other women while humming the same soft melodies of love and family. When I thought I saw the little bird I had freed from its cage at the marketplace flying above me, I followed its flight all the way to the outskirts of the settlement. I flapped my arms as it flapped its wings, as if that could allow me to fly. Therefore, I didn't hear the footsteps that came up behind me, nor did my mother hear my muffled screams as my kidnapper covered my mouth with its hand and dragged me away. All that could be heard echoing through the trees were Dongo's rantings. "Banish me, will you? Banish me?" I will never forget how it felt to be forced to walk, bound, and beaten for endless miles, each step taking me farther away from my mother and father. Have any of you been away from home or your parents? How did this make you feel? As I was marched, hundreds of other shackled and stumbling black men and women, taken as prisoners of war or kidnapped like me, joined us. We were herded by slave catchers like Dongo across western Africa up to the edge of the western shore. What will they do with the people they kidnapped? Why don't we read more and find out? Within days, pale, ghost-like men arrived to transact business with Dongo and the others. The white men took us, a few at a time, in small wooden boats to a large ship anchored offshore. There they forced us to lie on rough wooden planks, side by side, so close together that there was no more than a whisper and a prayer between us. How do you think it felt to sit so close and cramped on a boat like that? What I will forever remember is meeting a boy named Amadi, who sat beside me on the foul-smelling ship. Within moments of our meeting, he began to take care of me, and I took care of him. When Amadi was sick with the dreaded fevers, I comforted him by singing the songs my mother taught me each. When I tossed and turned with hunger, Amadi often said, "Take some of my gruel, little bird." As he wiped away my tears, Amadi would say, "Raise your head high, Minna. You are the daughter of a prince, the granddaughter of a great king. Yours is a great African heritage. No one can ever take that from you." What do you think Amadi means by saying no one can take Minna's great African heritage from her? It was 3 long months before the big wooden ship finally dropped anchor on the shores of a land called America. Can you imagine being crammed on that boat for 3 whole months? They herded those of us who had survived the painful voyage off the ship in shackles and chains. Amadi and I stood on a platform in front of many white men and women who bid for us as though we were cattle or goats at the marketplace. How would it make you feel if you were bid on and sold to another person? A tall white man with the cold eyes of a snake bought Amadi and me for what I later found out was less than $100. The man who bought us forced us to call him Master Clemens. Then he took away our names and told us, "Never speak a word of your savage language again." Why do you think Master Clemens took their names away? Even though we were just children, Master Clemens put Amadi and me to work in his cotton fields, from dawn to dusk, 6 days a week, until our backs nearly broke under the weight of our labor. Can you imagine doing all that work 6 days a week? Almost overnight, Amadi and I grew from boy and girl to man and woman. As we grew, so did our love for one another. Soon, our master gave us permission to get married. Every slave on the plantation came to watch us jump the broom into marriage at the wedding ceremony. In time, I gave birth to 4 beautiful children. Amadi and I raised our family in a tiny shack with the meager rations our master gave us and these rags on our backs as a reward. Though we lived in misery, captured in the cage of slavery, at least we had each other. But then I thought my life would truly end when my master told me, "I have sold your husband away." Can you imagine raising 4 children by yourself in such misery? It had been years since I'd heard my father's voice, and years since I'd felt my mother's caress. And then my husband was taken away before I could even say goodbye. I was never to hear another word from him again. My 4 children were all that I had in my life. I had to do all I could to try to keep the rest of my family together. My hopes for my family were denied as soon as my oldest child, Joshua, began to grow toward manhood. By then, everyone could see that my boy had a special gift. It's as if, when he talked to horses, they understood every word. Master Clemens saw the bond my son had with animals and sought to profit from it. The last time I ever saw Joshua, he was in chains in the back of a wagon. He was on his way to be sold to another plantation, just as his father had been sold away only 1 year earlier. "Please, master, don't tear my family apart again. You can't sell Joshua. Don't sell my son," I pleaded. But Master Clemens just pushed me aside. "That boy is more mine than yours," he yelled as the wagon drove Joshua away. Why do you think Master Clemens had more rights over Joshua than his own mother? Word was passed across country from slave to slave. After what seemed an unbearably long time, I found out that Joshua had been sent to the Randolph plantation, hundreds of miles away. Joshua will learn from their blacksmith all about the anvil and the fire. He will probably be hired out to bring more profits to his new master. A promise that Joshua made was also passed on to me. He vowed, "I will save every penny I am allowed to keep to buy freedom for my whole family." That is a very generous promise Joshua made. Would you do something like that for your family? My second child, Sally, was so smart. She taught herself to read by listening to our master's children at their lessons. But in Georgia, it was against the law for a slave to know how to read. Can you imagine having a law that didn't allow you to read? So Master Clemens took a whip to my Sally. She just stood there and took the lashing and did not even cry. That child has a will of iron and a head that won't be bowed. I feared for her. That's no way for a slave to be. So I woke Sally one night, hugged her, and put her in the arms of friends who would risk their lives taking my child up north to freedom. I cry every time I hear the song they sang when I saw her for the very last time. They were signaling to the other escaping slaves to steal away. Months later, I received a letter. I had to find someone to read it to me. The moment I first heard it, I memorized every word. "Mama, please don't worry about me. I am safe, though our travels were not easy. For 6 weeks we forded streams and walked hundreds of miles at night, always following the North Star. During the day we fell asleep in cold, wet, dark caves as we hid from slave catchers. Free black people, and sometimes even white people, offered us refuge. Mama, you should have seen how happy we were when we arrived at the rock with the P that told us we were at the Mason-Dixon line. We knew that in the state of Pennsylvania, we could finally be free. I love you, Mama. Sally." How did this letter make you feel? My boy Mason was smart like his sister and talented like his brother. He had a gift, but it wasn't how fast he could pick a row of cotton. That boy would take the banjo his daddy made and play it till even the birds tried to dance. But my master saw the joy we found in Mason's music. He raised his whip to my boy to stop his banjo playing, and I knew right then that if Mason stayed on this plantation, he would only become a beaten, broken slave in the fields. I sent word up north to Sally, the daughter I had not seen in 6 winters. In due time she answered my prayers. A strange black man came to our door and said, "I have come to help Mason steal away." I waited 6 months to hear what had become of my son. Then I found this note slipped under my cabin door. "Mama, Mason has been taken to Florida to live with a Seminole Indian family. For now, Mama, this is the best I can do to help Mason be free. Don't worry, somehow I will find a way to bring our family back together again. Your loving daughter, Sally." Now that you've seen 3 of the 4 children being taken away, do you think the 4th will too? Katie is my last child. She is my youngest, my dearest Katie. I do not know what I will do if she is ever taken from me. Katie is now working in the plantation's big house. She has humbled herself to Master Clemens' daughter. Our young mistress has told my daughter that neither she nor I will ever be sold if Katie remains her dutiful servant. I am telling my last child the story of her heritage, the story my own parents once told me. I am showing her how to make beautiful quilts and pottery from coils of red Georgia clay, like the ones I made as a child in Africa. We will probably never be released from this prison of slavery and rise to freedom like my Sally and my Mason. But Katie and I will somehow find comfort in our lives. Katie and I often walk together up to the boundaries of the Clemens plantation. As we walk, we hear singing, and if I try real hard, I almost hear my mother's voice. The women are singing the old hymn, "Now Let Me Fly," a song about a promised land that slaves can only find up in heaven. But when I hear that old song, I search the sky for that little African bird, and I dream of freedom. An after-reading strategy that I could use is a story map, which is a reinforcement activity for children that help them organize their understanding of a story into 4 different categories. Who is in the story? Where did the story take place? What happened in the story? And how did the story end?